Oh, we don't need no fancy words. I mean, we need to practice. We need to rehearse.
I'll tell you what we need. We need some paying gigs. We don't need this messing around, first one patio and then another, and that's ridiculous. We don't got no goddamn band. We don't need to fucking practice with you.
All right, welcome to the No GD Band podcast. This is Henry.
And I'm Chris.
And we have a weird kind of thing going on here. We have a lot, what would you call that? What is that bit? You know, when people eat, oh God, there's these special dishes in these places where they scrape the bits off the grill.
Oh.
The black stuff that's so delicious.
I don't know if that's a good way to describe it.
Is it called the trash?
The boat trash?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Like, so if you go to a seafood restaurant and you order a bucket of boat trash?
No, it's called a trash plate.
Really?
Yes. If you go,
where have you been eating?
No, it's a known thing. I talked to my boss about it once. The leftover bits are...
What I was thinking in my head, folks, was we both come from a musical background, and our bands, unfortunately, have never made it to the level of popularity where we could do a B-sides and rarities record, which Henry and I used to love. Remember when like REM would come out with one and we'd go grab it? Wasn't it called Eponymous?
Yeah, and all the leftover things that weren't quite prime time.
We loved it. So,
by the way, it's called a garbage plate, not
garbage
a trash
plate.
I didn't know.
So anyway, we're going to do a B-sides garbage plate of extra bits from our first 24, 25 episodes.
Hey,
can you believe we made it that long?
I can't believe we made it that long.
Yeah, so for all of you out there that want to hear this, we're going to call this a bonus episode, not an official ep. But it's got a bunch of bits that didn't make other shows. Hope you enjoy it.
Our first bonus ep.
It's a bonus ep. It's not going to come in. Nothing's going to be in any particular order. It's just going to be a bunch of bits. But we hope you enjoy it, and maybe I'll even sneak a song in there somewhere.
Enjoy our garbage plate.
Move on to the next time. I'm diving into this topic, the decline of the Charlotte Observer. What did you mean by that?
Man, what I mean is that, there was a time in my life. It was like Pulitzer Prize winning stuff. I would go out before I went to school and I'd grab the Charlotte Observer before I got on the bus and looked at it. I remember clearly looking at some reporting about Jim Baker and PTL and all of that was going south. And you had reporters on the other side that wrote some pretty decent articles about that. Now it seems like the Observer is reduced to this like clickbaity short article bullshit. And there was something about the print media that allowed them or gave them the space to actually say things that meant something. Now
I can't even find an article. You sent me an article. I can't get through all the ads and stuff.
Yeah, and they're reduced to having these really shitty ads at the bottom they're obvious like bullshit.
Clickbait, yeah.
And I'm like, that's where we've gotten to with journalism here.
Well, the New York Times, I can get to an article much quicker than I can the Charlotte Observer, and then it doesn't have all that like, look at the 3 top photos, celebrity boobs, like that's at the bottom of the Observer.
Right, and these guys were supposed to be serious journalism. The front page is basically a large print article. Met County won't pay $23,000 to hackers. Local, what's not working and what's not after the thing. For single dads, having Christmas help is a big relief. All these softball bullshit articles that mean fuck all. Like, and down at the bottom, sports stuff.
You know what though?
It's reduced to this sort of puff piece garbage.
But you know what? My mother, and she got this from my grandfather. God rest his soul. My mother. I've been going over to their house in the mornings, some mornings before work. My mom reads every word of the Charlotte Observer in print.
Is it better than this?
It still feels like a real, it's not.
Is it thick or?
It's thick and it's still got articles that I don't think are on the website, but it's also very non-clickbaity, obviously. But it's like my mother does not leave the breakfast table until she's read the whole goddamn paper. And my grandfather did this. And God love her. I love it because it's like going back in time.
But does she consider that like the liberal rag?
She doesn't care. She doesn't care. That's the best part about it. She'll go, what do you think about da-da-da-da-da-da-da? And I'll be like, where did you get that, Mom? Oh, it's page 4 of the Observer. I'm like, I love that. My grandfather, so this is the story of my mother's father would sit back in his little room with the television, and me and him in the summer would sit and read. I would watch Wheel of Fortune in the afternoons. I'd spend a week with them in the summer, and I'd watch Wheel of Fortune. He would still be reading the paper because he read every word of it. Mm-hmm. He hadn't said anything to me in about 40 minutes. He's like in the paper. He didn't even look up from the paper, and he goes, "Looks like old Earl down in on 441 has got a new crop of watermelons in there."
Because that was in the paper.
And we were in a little town. But I was like, I loved it because really you didn't even have to answer, but I'd always go, "Yep." And then you'd see him flip the page and he would tell me something else. And
I've been meaning to ask you about your gig because,
Now, this was not my gig. This is my papaw.
Your papaw.
Yes, sir. You met gig.
Right.
Henry knew my
I'm sorry.
My father's father.
Right.
Henry actually blew up one of his toy trains, and I thought he was going to kill us, but he was so grandfatherly he didn't even. Mm-hmm. There was one engine that was burned out because Henry burned it out when we went to visit my grandfather.
Lowered it down and burned it out.
Which was great, but we had a ball that night. We did have a ball that weekend, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he had built this little village. Remember the whole?
I do.
That was amazing, right? We were playing trains all night. We had a great time.
Did you ever get a sense? Like was he a political guy at all? Did he give a shit?
Yeah.
About that?
So my grandfather, I was talking.
They were Union, probably, right?
Well, I was talking to a friend about this the other day. I feel like I am liberal partially because I rebelled against my parents because my dad was conservative. My father's hero was his father. Mm. And I think my dad is conservative because my grandfather was. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was a news junkie before you could be one. Mm-hmm. So he watched the McLaughlin Hour. He watched anything on PBS that was news related. He watched, do you remember the Pat Buchanan Crossfire show?
Yeah, I do.
He watched Crossfire. He watched anything like that before there was 24-hour news. But he never... I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but you know, my grandfather just did not believe in civility.
Yeah. My
grandfather would never have stood for, and I remember him saying this. He said, I worked, there were a lot of black folks that worked on the railroad with me. He was like, there's no reason for someone to be rude or racist to a black person. To be conservative didn't mean to him to be racist or
right. It was different, right? Like, let me give you my grandfather, who was a lineman for Southern Bell, Bell and Bell South before this is before the 80s. They were AT&T. You would ask him. He was a union man. Those guys were all unionized, even here in the South back then. I think it was the Communications Workers, CWA. Communications Workers of America, and would espouse a lot of pro-union sentiment about that. He watched. I never got a sense of his political leaning at all. I was too young, but him and my grandmother would both watch Wall Street Week religiously.
Yeah, my grandfather would too. Yeah.
What is it about that show? Louis Rukeyser and all that. Apparently, that held a lot of meaning to him. And he would tell war stories, but they were always racial, right? But they were funny, if you can imagine. He thought it was like this grand old experience to be in a place where you called a German guy a kraut, and you called a Jewish guy a kike. It wasn't a thing. They were pejoratives, but in his mind, they were hurled about like the kind of things you would just say to a buddy. You're a fucking kike.
The personal story I have is I don't know why, but I was my papaw's favorite. Uh-huh. And my papa had never been to anything. He'd never eaten basically anything that wasn't on the farm.
Right.
And, I was a kid and they just got a Taco Bell in East Tennessee. And I was like, I want to go to Taco Bell. And, of course, no one would take me, but my papa would take me. Because,
He's your papa.
He's my papa.
Right.
So we walk in the Taco Bell. And I know my papa's never seen a taco before. He didn't even know what a burrito or a taco is. I can tell he's looking at the menu and he's totally flabbergasted. But he doesn't want to seem out of place. And the girl asked for our order, and my grandfather just goes, he looks over to the right, and he goes, I'll have what that Negro boy over there is having.
Right.
And my papa was hard of hearing, so he said it really loud. But the girl behind the counter was black. But he didn't mean it.
What was this, early 80s?
Yeah, early 80s. First of all, he meant Negro, he didn't mean Negro. But it was still the wrong word. You still don't use the word, but he said it.
Keep that. I hope that on the pod you can go,
well, I mean, I feel like I feel like that's
you're quoting him.
It wasn't like your grandfather. It was, at least for my grandfather, it wasn't pejorative. It was just like what you said was Negro.
Right.
But being Southern, it came out to me, my ears, it came out as Negra.
Negra. Negra.
And I literally wanted to melt under the counter.
Because it felt like something else.
And the best part of that was the girl behind the counter just snickered, black girl behind the counter snickered and goes, she said, I'll get you a taco.
Because she kind of could read the situation.
She just thought it was hilarious because there's this 80-year-old, like in her mind, I'm sure it was like, here's this old cracker. But I don't think he really meant anything by it. But it was just.
That's the weird thing about their prejudice. It was so on the top and matter of fact.
Yeah, and
it was just sort of, it was sloughed off as nothing.
And I never heard, now you may be different. My papa never, ever, in any other context, even mentioned race to me. He never was in the field going, well, I'm glad this farm isn't owned, I'm glad I can turn this farm over to white people.
No, you don't wax poetic about it forever.
I mean, I don't think he even thought about it.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Is their kind of racism was not the kind that you go on and on about because it was just part of the fabric of life. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
like today, if you're a fucking racist, then you really got to nail down your racism. You really got to say, you have to say some incendiary, shitty stuff that go counter to what the rest of the culture is saying. Those guys could engage in racism that was subtle and just accepted. Of course he's going to be like that. He's a Polak. Of course he's going to be like he's a fucking Jew.
Like
you know what I mean? That's
my papa was more of like a blue collar railroad worker. He worked for the same railroad as my gig, who was the superintendent. Mm-hmm. But my papa would say, I wasn't racist. There was lots of coloreds that work on the railroad.
Right. My grandmother.
Or there were lots of Negras that worked on the railroad.
My grandmother had a caretaker who was African American and grew to like her a lot and would say things like, you know what, so and so, you a credit to your race.
Yeah, my grandmother would say that too. She would say, so in her later years, this is like in my home instead sent this girl out to my house and she was great. And she would say, for a black person, she was like the best caregiver.
For a black, right.
And you'd be like, why are you qualifying that? I was like, and I would say stuff to her like, so who's your favorite caregiver that's come out here? And she'd be like, Linda. And I was like, but you just said for a black person she was good. And she was like, no, I meant she was good. She was great. But it was almost like in her racism, she had to let me know that the person was black. Like it was a out of the ordinary thing. Hey, my favorite caregiver also happened to be black.
And look at me and look how accepting I am of that, is what she's saying. I'm making progress.
I don't think she. No, I think it was more just like she was shocked that a black person was that great.
My grandmother was trying to ingratiate herself to us,
right,
and saying, "Hey, look,
I wish my grandmother had tried to assimilate. I don't think she ever even thought. She didn't even care what normal culture
is the weirdest thing. And I want that one last thing I'll say about Papa was that he would revel in those cultural exchanges. I remember him he told a story about when he was in the war and said somehow the American guys and the German guys ended up in the same bar.
Wow.
Can you imagine a situation like that?
I mean,
it's weird because I read, I was over in this class I was taking, I was reading Vonnegut. And he was talking about the bombing of Dresden.
Yeah, I just finished that book too, Henry.
The surface of the moon.
You got me to read it again.
So it's moving. It was very moving, mostly because it was the funniest and saddest book at the same time. Mm-hmm. And
if for those of you who don't know, we're talking about
Kurt Vonnegut,
Slaughterhouse-Five.
Yeah, but my point is that somehow, and I could totally see this happening. Those guys ended up in the same bar, and he would laugh about it because he thought that those racial differences were hilarious,
right?
Or he thought his own prejudice was hilarious. Does that make sense?
I think it was just so accepted that it was like, I don't have any problem with kikes. They're just kikes.
Yeah, and they probably think I'm something.
And
else.
They call me a wet.
And that's just what we are,
or whatever. You know, like Italians are this and.
Yeah, it was almost a New York kind of.
There's a new Wyoke album out. Are you a Wyoke fan at all?
You know, I could stand to give them a listen. I've kind of ignored them. I know they're good.
I'm going to tell my quick Wyoke story, and then we'll play this song.
Okay.
I really like their new record.
The whole album is out?
Yes, the whole album is out, and I've been a big Wyoke fan since they started. I went to see them in Asheville on their last tour. I thought they were headlining, Henry, at the Orange Peel. And I showed up, and they were on stage when I showed up because they were the opening band. It's a duo. Mm-hmm. It's a guy and a girl. She plays guitar and keyboards, and he plays drums and keyboard. So when their set ended, the band that came on after them was called Future Islands, which I had never seen before, and apparently it's from the same town. And I didn't know anything about them. And the girl from Wyoke was standing by me at the bar at the Orange Peel. And this fucking guy gets on stage with Future Islands and starts doing this weird, goofy dancing, which everyone in the world but me is in love with. And the music was terrible. And so I looked at her and I thought, this is my chance. And I said, I cannot believe that you're opening for this band. You guys are like one of my favorite bands, and this is a travesty.
Let me guess. She didn't react well to that shit.
And she actually said, fuck you.
Oh, no.
Future Islands is my favorite band. And they're one of the best bands in the world. Now, Henry knows me well enough to know that the only way I said to her what I said to her was I'd already had a few whiskey. So when she said that to me, I was really hurt because I had come from Charlotte to Asheville to see her. And I said, you are crazy. I said, you are crazy. I actually told her, you are crazy. This band is terrible, and that guy looks like a fool.
What did she say to that?
And she said, you have no musical taste, and walked off.
Oh, man.
So let me put it to you this way. I still like Wyoke, which means they must be really good, because I came from Charlotte to Asheville
to see her,
paid money just to see her, and she called me a fool.
You must really like it
for liking her band. But anyway, so unless you have a comment, Henry,
she was trying to defend her friends that from unnecessary or unwarranted criticism that she felt you were delivering to him.
The guy looked like an asshole, Henry, and I don't care what anybody says. That guy looks like an asshole.
That whole thing.
Worse than that, he looks like a total retread. And I can tell you right now, there would be no discussion of Future Islands if that guy had not got on David Letterman and danced like an idiot. He looks like a monkey with an organ grinder. And people were like laughing because there's this whole thing now of fat 40-something-year-old guys in sweaters dancing goofy that makes everyone laugh. That, you know what, I'm still of the generation where you should look cool. You shouldn't look like an idiot in an oversized sweater, sporting a beer gut, dancing like a goofball, and people go, I love your song, ironically. You know, and what I was doing was I was telling her how much I liked her music earnestly, not some ironic idiot up there dancing. But you know what?
I don't think he would consider it ironic.
I'm in the minority with this guy. Everyone loves him but me. So anyway, this is Wyoke from their new record, which I love, which she would probably chastise me for because it's not as good as the new Future Islands record.
Let's get an interview. Let's get her back on the phone.
She wouldn't talk to you for 5 seconds if you criticize Future Island. She'd tell you to go fuck yourself. Which, by the way, she moved to Chapel Hill. They're on Merge Records, and they're big Chapel Hill people now, North Carolina people.
Let's call her up.
We'll do it. We'll see if we can get an interview with her. Do not mention that you don't like Future Islands, or that's
the first thing I'm going to say.
Big no.
Hey, have you ever heard of this band called Future Islands? I heard they really suck.
Click.
That's the whole thing. It's going to be a long, elaborate joke to get her on the phone.
All right, so we'll keep you posted on it. This is a new song from the new album by Wyoke, and it's called "The Instrument." Henry, have you seen the movie Quiet Place?
No, but a guy that I worked with saw this and gave it crap reviews, and so it made me think, I need to see this. I heard Michael Bay directed this, right? Which is like
that. I'm glad I didn't hear that.
I'm hearing that he's the guy that did Transformers and kind of shitty movies like that.
We don't like Michael Bay. Neither of us like Michael Bay.
But I heard that, and my friend at work saw it in IMAX and said it was wasted. But the first thing that I reacted is, this is probably the movie I need to see. This is probably, it has a lot of quiet and interesting bits to it. My understanding is that it's a thriller with people in the place that are deaf. And so it's largely quiet. Tell me what you know.
Okay, so first of all, while Henry's talking about it, I was going to look it up because I was under the impression that John Krasinski, who stars in the movie, wrote and directed it.
Is that true?
I'm going to look that up.
The guy that I work with said Michael Bay did it.
If it was Michael Bay, it's the best Michael Bay movie I've ever seen because I fucking hate Michael Bay.
Me too.
And I wanted to give this a good review. So your friend is wrong. John Krasinski wrote and directed this film.
Excuse the fuck out of me.
No, it's okay because I
have no idea.
I can understand that, and I'm glad that Michael Bay didn't direct this because if this is Michael Bay, I'm pissed because this is good. I like this film. So my impression
Krasinski directed it.
He wrote and directed it himself.
Cut this out, man.
No.
The fucking guy said that.
That's perfectly fine because you didn't know. And I'm going to tell you this: if it had been Michael Bay, it would have wrecked my world because I can't imagine that Michael Bay could do anything this good.
Tell me why it was good. I know it's good. And
here's the thing. First of all, I want you to know I went in with no expectation. I did not want to see this film.
Why not?
I don't. You know me, Henry. I'm a horror aficionado, which you poo-poo, but I could not trust that John Krasinski from The Office could write and direct a horror movie that I'm gonna like. Megan wanted to see it. My wife wanted to see it. I've got Movie Pass now. Fuck it. I'll go see shit. I'll go see any movie now. I go sit into this quiet place, not expecting anything. I gotta say, it was really good. Not only was it really good, you have to see it in the theater. And I'll tell you why.
IMAX?
No. You don't have to see it in IMAX. It's totally fine in 2D, which I saw. There's 20 minutes at the beginning of almost complete silence.
Yes.
And what that does
like
is, but here's what the thing does. It creates this atmosphere. It lulls you into thinking the noise that you make affects what's going on the screen.
Really?
So everyone in the theater with you is quiet. I saw it in a packed theater. And I can't imagine watching it at home where I was literally eating my popcorn one kernel at a time and chewing it as slow as I could, not because I was worried about fellow moviegoers. I was worried that I would fuck them up on the screen because they're trying to be so quiet on the screen. So it lulls you into this, like, we all need to be quiet, which I don't think you would have got if you watch it on DVD, which would ruin part of the effect. That part of it's great. It almost reminded me of what I've heard about 1960s movies where they would do smell-o-vision, or they would do, like, they would put little, like, they would emit an odor into the theater.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's these extended quiet places in, like, the Brown Bunny, that movie.
I think it's brilliant. I still think Brown Bunny is one of the most brilliant movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, me too.
And honestly, just as a side note, I'll probably cut this out, but the Brown Bunny, forget the whole dick sucking scene, which it's famous for. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're out there, you're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? Yeah. What the Brown Bunny does is it actually makes you feel like what the character actually goes through like a real human. There's a scene in the Brown Bunny where he pumps gas, and he pumps an entire tank of gas, like all of us do. And it's excruciating. You're not used to in movies watching somebody for 2 minutes just stand there and pump gas, and your brain's going, what is going on?
Why aren't we moving on?
Why are we not moving? And it's like, because he hasn't finished pumping the gas yet. And that movie, the entire movie Brown Bunny, which I think no one gets about that movie, is it makes you think about what's real. Like when he rides off into the sunset on a motorcycle, he rides off into the sunset. It's going to take 3 minutes
to do that
because your eyes can see him that long.
That's Jessica's favorite movie.
I love that movie. And anyway,
but
so
is
A
it
Quiet
like
Place?
that, or
no, A Quiet Place, like the first 20 minutes,
quick cuts or
no, it's like a regular movie, but it's quiet, which you're not used to for 20 minutes, and it puts you on edge, and it makes you quiet. And then the rest of the movie, you're in the same feeling this family's in, like, don't make any noise. And it's really not a horror movie. Like, and Henry knows I'm a horror aficionado. It's a suspense movie. It makes you on edge. It makes you feel nervous.
So it puts you in the place. Because I think one of the things about horror movies that I would take action to you with is that, you know, the last time you and me and Jeff went to go see that movie, I never felt in it. I was always separate and distinct.
Okay, this is going to put you in it.
Do you follow what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like maybe the problem is that I'm not bought in enough. Like,
well,
there's always a degree of separation.
This is the neat thing about this movie, and you can tell me if you see it, what you
I'll
think.
Watch it.
The first thing is he never tries to explain what the monsters are.
I fucking love that.
There's no like. Yeah. You either can believe that they're there or not. You don't. I mean, you can.
Is it created in your mind?
I mean, no, they're real, but it's not like. It's just like I'm not trying to tell you these came from a fucked up chemical or UFO, or it came from biological weapons. I'm not even going to tell you. There's just a fucking thing. There's just these fucking things, and they hunt by sound, and. You can either deal with that as a reality or not. This is what my family's doing. And the other thing that I knew was going to happen, but it didn't bother me, was this whole film is set up. This whole movie is set up to say, how far would you go to protect your kid?
To the end of the earth.
Okay, because by 30 minutes into this movie, at some point, one of these parents is going to be asked, how far will you go to protect your kid? And even though you see it coming, it got me, like, and I don't even have kids, but it got me right here to say, if it takes this to protect my kid.
And those of you who are listening, Chris has got his arms
out wide, like
to the side, like a
crucifix. I can't beat you, but I can keep you from kidding my kids. So come on, let's do this.
Yeah. So
and to get that across in a movie was just amazing to me.
The reviews that I read was, or that I saw, it's got 90.
But the scariest thing in the movie, which is great, has nothing to do with the monster. And I'm not gonna leave you. But that was the best part to me, was there was this surprise where it was like, there's something in this movie that you're like, oh shit, I hope that doesn't happen. And it has nothing to do with the monster. So I'll leave that with you. But I think, Henry, from a person that didn't even want to see it to this is really good. So
I'll do that.
Props to John Krasinski, and
holy shit, like who would know?
I know, and I mean, it kind of reminds me of the guy that did Get Out, Key and Peele guy.
Like you expect him to do some kind of, yeah.
I didn't expect him to be like a dominant director, and now like those two guys can probably do whatever they want.
Anyway, we were talking about that in the break, and then Chris was about to say something.
Well, I've noticed,
and I said, "Let's get back on the mic."
Well, I've noticed with myself that I think I've gone a little bit overboard with my reactions to things. Mm-hmm. Although this really did upset me, but like instead of just saying this particular event upset me, I think I ended my comment rant on Facebook with, the bad people are winning.
The bad people are winning.
And it was sounded like what a 70-year-old man would say. But so the situation was, I read an article about, I'm a big Frank Lloyd Wright.
Right.
I hate to use the word fan because I think the guy's one of the great artists of our time, of the modern age. So it sounds belittling for me to say I'm his fan. Like, that's like saying I'm a fan of the Mona Lisa. I'm
aficionado.
I'm not a fan of the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa is like one of the greatest works of art of all time. Of course I like it because I'm a fucking human.
Right.
So anyway, Frank Lloyd Wright to me is like that. And so I saw this article about, he built about a year, almost to the day before he died. One of his last works was from his Usonian period. If you want to look that up, it's very functional. He built a library for this small town. The library hasn't been used for years. The owner of it sold it last year. It was just an empty Frank Lloyd Wright building. Mm-hmm. He sold it to a guy in his 20s who turns out to have no idea who Frank Lloyd Wright is, and on top of that, couldn't give a fuck.
Really?
And basically instantly tells the city, this is what my plans are for the property. I'm going to raise this dump doctor's office and build condos or whatever he's going to do.
Really?
So, of course, quickly, and I have a book. There's a book that, like, if you're a Frank Lloyd Wright fan, I hate to use that word, every single Frank Lloyd Wright building is cataloged and like talked about, and it's like preserving statues. You know what I'm saying? It's like It's like a work of art. So
right.
So a couple of the preservation societies quickly swoop in and they talk to this kid and they're like, "You can't tear this down. It's like it's bigger than you. This property's bigger than you." And he's like, "Okay, whoa, I didn't know anything about this. Wow, okay, like let me look into it." He looks into it and then he's like, I had this thing. I was going to make X amount of money on this property. In my head, I've got Martin Skirtle. I'm going to.
Oh yeah.
So
Martin Shkreli.
Yeah, whatever his name. So
guy.
Guess what, dude? You guys, I don't even want to talk about it. Give me $1.7 million. You got 2 weeks. Give me $1.7 million. I won't tear your little library down. So they're like, that's ransom. That's crazy, but we'll do it. Like, it's that important. They start working to raise the money. 10 days later, in the middle of the night at 2 a.m., he has a bulldozer raise the building. Didn't even wait the full 2 weeks and was basically like, fuck you. You're not going to make it, which they weren't. They weren't going to make it in 2 weeks, but they had already started the process and they were going to raise the money. He tore down a Frank Lloyd Wright, one of his last works, basically because he's a fucking asshole tool.
Right.
And you know what? The bad people are winning, Henry. They're just winning.
They
don't give a shit.
Right. You marched in with Hitler and Stalin and fucking Darth Vader. And that it was like Cat Williams said that the other day in a stand-up routine. Dun, I feel that's what's running in my head. Dun, 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 dun.
It's like Ramadi.
Like for real.
Like we don't know it because we're Western culture and we're idiots. But like Ramadi is this city with all these antiquities in Iraq. And ISIS took over Ramadi and just fucked all that shit up because they don't care about history. They want to erase history. They're like a bunch of they're fucking millennials. They don't know fucking shit about anything prior to 1998, and they're just like fuck all about all that stuff. It's like it's terrifying to me, and it's probably the Trump election. If Clinton was president right now, I probably would have been able to take it in stride a little bit more. But I see all this stuff, and it just...
And there's nobody to pick up the pieces. There's nobody to protect you anymore, right?
Well, just,
when bad shit
like,
happens, you expected somebody to come in and try to even the playing field a little bit. That's not going to happen anymore.
Or it just seems like, I went to see the new Blade Runner movie. We talked about that. And, half the people that were in there walked out when me and Jeff were watching, and it was all the younger people, and it was almost like, if I tried
You mean they walked out during the movie?
Yeah, because I thought it was boring. And I'm like, if I tried to explain... Okay, here's my thing.
What?
When we were... Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to sound like a grumpy old man here, but when we were in our 20s, I didn't live through World War II, but I have a knowledge of World War II.
Sure.
If you'd asked me, Chris, what are your thoughts on Bob Dylan? I didn't really live through Bob Dylan going electric, but I knew all about when Bob Dylan went electric in the 60s
because I read about it.
I took the time to learn about it. Young people have the ability to learn about anything they want. They've got these machines that they could learn. They should know more than we do about the entire history of the world. They don't know shit, and they don't. What's scary is they don't care.
It doesn't have as much value. Remember we talked about, I don't know if this is a side effect of this, but knowledge used to have a certain kind of value associated with it, right?
Yeah.
If you earned it or looked at it, and it had a weight, right, that stayed with you, right? But if everything is available to you always, if all music didn't require you to do any digging or weighing of options or any of that stuff to download it to your head, if every piece of knowledge that you can have is easily found on Wikipedia,
then I'm not even going to look for it.
Then it ceases to have any real actual value.
I'm sitting
right. So the Frank Lloyd Wright idea, this thing,
I can look it up on Wikipedia.
It has value to us because we grew up in a world in which those things were nebulous, right? And we didn't understand. I'm spitballing here. This is a theory. Those things were nebulous, but we knew that knowing a thing had a value, right? If I grow up in a world in which it doesn't have any value, do I really respect anything?
I almost feel like,
right?
No, obviously. And then the other...
Is that the side effect here?
Well, there's a couple of side effects. There's that, plus, and you can talk to this more than I can.
I don't know.
The second one is, I think there's this kind of thing where when me and you were 22, if I was going to know anything about World War II, I had to pack it in my noodle because there was nowhere else to carry it. Right. I think kids think, okay, this Frank Lloyd Wright guy, it's all on Wikipedia if I ever want to look it up, but I'm not going to look it up.
But I'm not going to live with it.
I don't want to live with it because it's right there if I need it.
Because it doesn't have any. Right, things live with you,
right?
And they have meaning in your digestion of it.
Yes,
right. So when somebody told you a story about this thing, you lived with it. You remembered it. You took it. You took it away. You recycled it in your brain. You weighed different things. Was it this way? Was it that way? Maybe you asked a question of somebody in a year down the road,
or even the things we talked about, like when we were kids with REM.
Yeah.
I couldn't look up REM and see a picture of them. I couldn't find a picture of them anywhere because the only time we found somebody talking about REM, it was a photocopied fanzine where the picture just looked like a blurry. I couldn't tell what they looked like, and that added to the mystique. I wanted to know who they were. When I heard about Falling Water, which was the most famous Frank Lloyd Wright building.
That's the one built on top of the waterfall.
Yeah, and I read about it, but I couldn't put it in my head. Like I had to visualize it in my head on my own, and then go see it. And it held this resonance for me because I had built it up in my head of what it was. Now kids can go, oh, Falling Water, and they just look a bunch of pictures of it on Wikipedia, and they're like, got it, know it, great, move on. There's no wow factor.
They won't go, wow, that's amazing. Whereas as somebody like us, we're still, even to this day, amazed that I can look at this thing and get damn near any piece of information I want.
Yes. And I'll tell you something else.
Because those things have value.
I just noticed this the other night. And I'm going to say I just noticed this too. So I'm putting myself in this boat. I watched a commercial during the football game yesterday for the new iPhone 10. And I realized the entire crux of the iPhone 10 advertising campaign is this thing feeds your narcissism better than anything else. It's just a bunch of people pretending to do selfies, and basically the iPhone can do the selfie better than any other phone. They're not talking about the phone has better music options or you can use a style. None of that. It's just all a bunch of like hipster music with people making faces at themselves going, better tone for your better quality for your selfie. And that's like
with portrait mode,
and all this, and there's hipster music on you, and you go, oh my God. People under 40 are so self-absorbed, they don't even know they're self-absorbed.
That's the new normal.
And the new norm is, fuck Frank Lloyd Wright. I don't know nobody named Frank Lloyd Wright. I bought this building. I need to make my $1.7 million. Gone. Fuck it. Fuck it, man. Probably taking selfies in front of the building as it goes down.
Yeah, dang. This is... Well, I did manage to look up Usonian.
Mm-hmm.
That was very interesting. It's a term usually referring to a group of approximately 60 middle-income family homes beginning in 1936. The Jacobs House, they were typically small, single-story, no garage, not much storage. They're often L-shaped to fit around a garden terrace on unusual or inexpensive sites. So this was this was a way for him to bring such things to normal.
All right, Henry. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the whole Lindsey Buckingham Fleetwood Mac thing, and I thought this would be a good time to bring up. I thought about this when they kicked Lindsey Buckingham out, or I guess that's what happened. I don't really know.
You know what? I have to wonder if he didn't engineer it to be this way.
I kind of feel like he did too. I do too. I felt
because, everything I've read about him makes me think that he's always been the most dramatic. He's always been the most spiky of all of them. And so why not have a situation where you kick me out?
Exactly. Like he can't just go quietly into that night.
I started listening to the Lindsey Buckingham Christine McVie record. I haven't gotten through it yet, but it's like him, her, him, her, him, her.
I don't like her.
It's basically a Fleetwood Mac record.
It is, and I think I don't know if you felt this way either, but I think this firing is kind of a retaliation for not making that a Fleetwood Mac record.
Just fire me. That's what he's thinking.
But
I'm at the end of my career.
Don't you agree that it's better than the last Fleetwood Mac record?
No.
I think it is.
I kind of liked that last Fleetwood Mac.
Here's what I'll take back. If you'd have put the Stevie Nicks songs from the last Fleetwood Mac record with the Buckingham songs from this record, you'd have a much better record. Right. I just cannot get the Christine McVie ballad. I just cannot.
They have to put that in there, and it's just not.
Oh, Daddy.
I'm not feeling it.
That just blows it on Rumors. Oh, Daddy. When I hear her say that, I just go, I'm going to the next tune.
He has this penchant for doing old school 50s rock and trying to recontextualize a little bit. But he did his best work, like the solo stuff was on Gifted Screws. That's probably the best thing he could do.
I agree.
And so here's another weird thing about him, Chris, that you might not understand. Why does he keep staying with the same guitar sound all the time? Does that annoy you a little bit?
I don't know that it...
Like, he makes the most of it, but it's always that sound.
I feel like, though...
Is it the finger picking thing?
I could be wrong, because the finger picking thing he does on...
It overshadows, it's like it recontextualizes his whole career.
Well, it's almost like saying, why does Jimi Hendrix stick with being Jimi Hendrix? It's almost like going, well, the reason he sticks with it, Henry, is because no one else is that good at what he's doing.
Yeah, but he used to play, in the old days of Fleetwood Mac, you play Les Paul.
I know.
I really think one of the things that draws me to him is his he seems to be pretty narcissistic, I guess.
Here's what this is going to sound terrible, but not now, but back in the day, he reminded me of what you would be like if you were famous.
Yeah, it's the worst. But without anybody to pull you away from that being that guy. Like, I don't want to be that.
Well, but also, like, you kind of feel for that guy. Like, he's not a bad guy.
There's a Kanye West.
You don't feel like he's a bad person, but he's kind of being an egomaniac.
I understand it. I think it's like I have an emotional understanding of how he must feel trying to put himself forward and be good.
Well, I wanted to go in a whole different direction. So my thought was, what is my favorite Fleetwood Mac non-Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham era song? Mm-hmm. And I think the Bob Welsh era, which is right before Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, is the best non-Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks era of Fleetwood Mac. If you give a shit enough to try that out, and if you're sitting here going, I didn't know there was a Fleetwood Mac before them, check it out. There's actually 2 or 3 incarnations before that. There's the fabled Peter Green era in the 60s, right, which I can't really get into because it's all bluesy. But Peter Green did a whole LSD, went off the deep end, went insane. Who was the guy in Pink Floyd that did that?
Syd Barrett.
Syd Barrett. That whole thing happened in Fleetwood Mac. Bob Welsh was brought in the mid-70s prior to Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. And there was one great record that he did with them, the record right before the self-titled Fleetwood Mac came out. Anyway, it might be, Henry, I've told you this before, it might be my favorite Fleetwood Mac song of all time, including all the Lindsey Buckingham stuff. It's called Hypnotized. And Bob Welsh is the leader of Fleetwood Mac at that point. Christine McVie, Mick Fleetwood, and I forget the bass player guy's name. John McVie. And it's called Hypnotized.
Let's play that.
Yes, the same kind of story that seems to come down from long ago. 2 friends having coffee together when something flies by their window. It might be out on that lawn, which is wide, at least half of a playing field. Because there's no explaining what your imagination can make you see and feel. Your body means nothing, you know you're hypnotized. It's not a meaningless question to ask if they've been and gone. I remember a talk about North Carolina in a strange, strange poem. You see, the sides were like glass in the thick of a forest without a road. And if any man's hand ever made that land, then I think it would have showed. And that's why it seems like rain They got me hypnotized. And I know that's right. They say there's a place down in Mexico where a man can fly over mountains and hills. And he don't need an airplane or some kind of engine, and he never will. Now you know it's a meaningless question to ask, if those stories are right. Because what matters most, feeling you get when you're hypnotized. When it seems like a dream, they got you hypnotized. Your body means nothing.
I was going to bring up, and this probably happens a lot more, Henry, than this particular article I'm going to bring up, but I just saw this the other morning in my news feed, and it just struck a tone with me, one of these. So there's a Fox News article on the Fox News website that came across my news feed. The headline was, "How long will I be allowed to remain a Christian?"
The hell's that?
It's this constant.
What do you mean not allowed to remain a Christian?
It's this constant gaslighting of the religious right and conservatives that Fox News does. So I look at the article. So first of all, under the headline of the article is this picture with soft lighting looking up from the bottom of all these like really wholesome looking great people holding hands. I'm assuming in soft light, like the light of Jesus shining down on them. I guess they're Christian.
Stock photo,
yeah. Is probably So basically, you're not going to be shocked, but the whole gist of the article is that the entire left and basically most of the country is out to get Christians and to stop Christians from being Christians, and Christians aren't allowed to be Christians like publicly, and even though my perception of the world, especially that I live in North Carolina, is everything is Christian oriented. Yeah. It's okay to...
Everything's steered that way.
It's okay to do a 3-day special on the death of Billy Graham, the greatest, prophet of Jesus. But these articles, I was thinking about it, Henry, these articles, these are the kinds of things that these people inundate themselves with every day. And it gets them so fired up and so... I would be, if this article was true, I would be... And if I was a Christian, I would hate the rest of the world too. I'd be pissed off too.
This is an opinion piece, right? So this is a guy wrote it named Douglas McKinnon, an opinion thing in Fox News. Now, if you look at the Washington Post,
here's one of his articles. Here's one of his paragraphs.
What?
The prevailing view in much of the media is that Christianity is aligned with Republicans, conservatives, and the views of Trump, and therefore must be diminished and made suspect. That doesn't sound like, that's not just an opinion, Pete. That sounds like he's stating a fact.
He's saying, yeah. But yeah, it's not, but in any newspaper, there's always someone who attempts to do analysis and opinion, right?
Christianity is an infiltration to the left.
I will say this. Look at this article doesn't really require a lot of deep thought. It's filled with a lot of things talking about the there's something I scrolled through here. For me personally, I continue to be ridiculed for writing and speaking about a vision I had regarding the 40 days after the resurrection. You know, this guy comes from a certain perspective, and he's written to throw red meat out there to anybody who will listen to it.
But there are people out there
Well,
who will come into work that day and go, "We're under attack. My beliefs are under attack." And it's not, they aren't under attack. It's just your own side gaslighting you to get all pissed off.
will those Christian children eventually be forced to renounce or deny their faith in order to get a job and provide for their families? What kind of stupid fucking question is that?
It's like fantasy world. Of course not.
Well, someday
The left
the
are the
sky
ones
turn orange and we all bow.
The left is the one protecting freedom of all religions. So no, asshole, your kids can practice whatever religion they want. It's just
Anyway.
it's almost should be illegal to put articles like this out to the general public because they're not smart enough to dismiss this as what it is.
And they're not tethered in factual things. They're just on some guy opining about what might happen because some people said something somewhere.
There's a passage in here about, he says something about a teacher who was fired for taking a knee with his team at the end of the football game. It doesn't name who the teacher was. It doesn't say where he was a coach. It doesn't give any kind of background except this guy made it up, right? Like, tell me who this teacher is. I want to know, was he actually fired for taking a knee? Doesn't sound, I mean, I see professional football players, baseball players, and basketball players every day put their fingers on their chest, look up to God, and point to God whenever they hit a home run.
Thank you, Lord Jesus.
I've never heard of them being fired. To me, that's overtly religious. And they do it all the time. There's no war on Christianity. I've never even heard of the war on Christmas.
There's a war on
until it
ignorance.
was the right.
There's a war on ignorance.
All right, Henry, this is one that may be a week or two old by the time the podcast comes out, but Harry Anderson passed away. And I think both of us, Night Court was kind of...
Oh, yeah. And I didn't know he lived in Asheville, did you?
I did not know that. He moved... I did know that. I will say this. I knew that when he first moved. I forgot it. The reason he moved, and I read an article in the Asheville Times about it, which kind of made me want to move to Asheville, was he said that it was the kind of place where a magician... Because, you know, he was really into magic. I don't know if you remember that from the show.
I do remember that, yeah.
Where an oddball magician could do his thing and it wouldn't stand out as weird or odd. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that's a great statement for Asheville. But I don't know if you remember folks out there, again. The whole magic aspect of Night Court was all Harry Anderson. That was him bringing his personal life. That was not part of the show. That was like he kind of demanded that his character was into magic, like his personal, like that was his whole shtick. That was his thing. But the thing I liked about Night Court was it was kind of like the sitcom. It almost emulated being Night Court in that it was on during prime time, but it acted like it was kind of on at like 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's the feeling I got. Like
Right.
It was sort of below the radar, but that doesn't account for why the thing lasted for like 9 seasons.
Well, it was on like one of their powerhouse nights. It was on like the Cosby night of NBC.
Like, did it piggyback off that show?
I think it was like the 10 o'clock show on like, you had like Cosby. And
but
then
that one iconic dude was on it with
Moose?
the bald head.
It was Bull.
Yeah, like that guy sticks in your mind.
It's what you imagine Night Court would be like, which I don't even know if that's real.
Because
I don't
it's
even know if
crazy.
there's a real concept of like
is there really?
if you get arrested at 2 a.m.
Our podcast listeners could tell us: is there an after hours court?
Right, I don't know. But that show really felt like it was in its own thing. So rest in peace.
Yep,
Harry Anderson. We really appreciated your work there. I don't know if you realize there's been a new Tom Waits reissue. They re-released all 7 of his first records, the Asylum years, this week. I don't know if you're a Tom Waits guy. I'm a big Tom Waits guy.
Yeah, I watched a documentary about him not too long ago.
Most of the Asylum records, Henry, are more when he was doing that, almost like a storyteller kind of pastiche kind of.
Is it The Piano Has Been Drinking? Is that
Yes,
on there?
yes. Okay, that's on my favorite record, A Small Changes. There's a lot of, he's playing a character. So he's playing this kind of like older, drunk, barroom kind of guy on a lot of the records. Of course, Swordfish Trombones in that period is my favorite.
Yeah.
Right after this period. But if I hadn't gone back and looked at some of this stuff in a while. I went back and looked at it, and they've remastered a lot of it. And I just think that guy's one of those guys, like, you're going to look back on him. You know, he's one of those people like when
how do guys like that get a major label record deal?
Or how
and they keep pushing, because in this day and age, people like
would
that
never
don't
get a deal.
Right.
It was almost like they gave him 4 records to figure out what the fuck was going on.
Yeah. It was interesting that you would mention, that you would say that I don't know that everybody knows about him playing a character on those things.
I read this biography. Tom Waits met his wife somewhere near the end of the Asylum years, who actually became not just his wife, but she became a collaborator and a partner, and she actually helped write some songs, a lot of the songs going forward. She almost became like his, like an editor for a novelist. She made him stop drinking. And so he would readily admit that, like, he took the character too far. Like the character he was playing on Nighthawks at the diner drank and hung out in bars, was kind of like a Bukowski. He was doing a Bukowski kind of thing. He said he even started realizing that he was drinking way more than he needed to be the character.
Right. Because I thought that this is just the way that he wanted to present to the world. I thought that was actually him.
I don't think it is. I don't think it was.
To some degree, like on the records, he's adopting a character of that, but he also lived it. That's what I thought.
I think that too, but I don't think that he ever thought that. Personally, I don't think. Because he changed.
He wasn't a clean living guy, obviously.
But he was after that.
After that.
Right.
After she cleaned him up.
But I don't know if she cleaned him up or if she made him realize it's a persona. And I think his acting as well, he's great in the early Jim Jarmusch movies.
And that vampire movie. He was in Dracula
he's
too.
Great. He's the best thing in that Dracula fucking movie. So I don't know, and I could be wrong, but I know one thing that has always been true about Tom Waits, and he said this on Terry Gross, that, like, all he ever wanted to be was an old man. Until he became an old man.
I know that feeling.
And he's got the crazy voice.
Yeah.
And I just think it's amazing that, like, he worshipped King. He couldn't wait to be 60.
With the hat.
Yeah, he did all this stuff to make himself seem like he was older.
Well, remember he did that one thing with fishing with John.
That was great. That was so great. That was
he
so
sober?
awkward.
Was he sober?
Yeah, I think he was sober.
With the fish down his
And
pants.
that guy John is so weird.
What's his name?
No,
John?
but he was doing that. So my take on that was like any 50-year-old guy that's bored that doesn't fish is like, I'll freak this fucking dude out. I'll just put a fish down my pants. And then that John guy freaks out.
Who doesn't know how to fish himself.
He doesn't even, he's like so weird. He doesn't even know how to. And Tom Waits has the regular guy reaction, which is weird to see Tom Waits. It's just like, Jesus Christ, dude, fucking chill out. That was a joke. You know what I mean? It was like the tables were turned. I love that. Fishing with John.
With John.
That's a weird dude and a weird program. Did you ever think that was an act, though?
That John's thing was an act?
Yeah.
No.
You think he really was that weird?
Yeah.
And somebody that was his friend said, you know what, we should do a show. When you out-weird Tom Waits, when you make Tom Waits go...
Tom Waits was weird as shit on that show.
I know, but he still was like, this fucking guy can't take a joke. I just put a fish down my pants. Chill.
And remember, there's a lot... It was John Lurie.
John Lurie, who was in... Oh, John Lurie was in the Jim Jarmusch movie with Tom Waits. They starred opposite each other. I bet that was a fucking setup. Now I feel had.
William Dafoe was in it.
John Lurie.
Matt Dillon was in it.
John Lurie's an actor. He was acting. He's not that crazy. Fuck, you just ruined it for me.
He's still alive, by the way.
He's a good actor. Fishing with John was a whole joke on the world.
By the way, there was a little stalking incident with John Lurie.
Did you know that? Was he stalking somebody?
In August of 2019, Tad Friend wrote a piece in the New Yorker.
Wait a minute, August of 2019?
August 2019. 10, excuse me.
Okay, it's like
Did I say 2019?
You did.
It must be the booze. Wrote a piece in the New Yorker about Lurie disappearing from New York to avoid a man named John Perry, who friends said was stalking him.
Well,
anyway,
I don't know how we got there, but let's.
Lurie is fucking weird, man.
Lurie is weird. I'm gonna have to go back and research John Lurie. But if you ever want to, if you're a millennial,
Down by law.
Down by law.
Yeah.
If you're a millennial and you don't like old movies, first of all, fuck you.
Go fuck yourself. Go watch Down by Law.
Because we're gonna watch Down by Law in a movie theater.
It had a budget of $453,000 and made the money back.
And it's brilliant and genius. But here is Tom Waits from the Asylum Years taking us out after Henry says the words.
Borrow a couple of bucks from you to go waltzing Matilda, you go waltzing Matilda with me. I'm an innocent victim of a blinded alley, and I'm tired of all these soldiers here. No one speaks English and everything's broken, and my stasis are soaking wet. To go waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you go waltzing Matilda with me. Now the dogs are barking and the taxi cab's parking. A lot they can do for me. I begged you to stab me. You tore my shirt open, and I'm down on my knees tonight. Old Bushmills, I staggered. You buried the dagger. Your silhouette window light. To go waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you go waltzing Matilda with me. Now I lost my St. Christopher, now that I've kissed her, and the one-armed bandit knows, and the maverick Chinaman in the cold-blooded signs, and the girls down by the striptease shows go waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you.
We don't need no fancy words. I mean, we need to practice. We need to rehearse.
I'll tell you what we need. We need some paying gigs. We don't need this messing around, first one patio and then another, and that's ridiculous.